Alex Navarro, I had a strong itch to listen to Nirvana for like 3 hours after last night.
Yeah, okay. What inspired that exactly?
In the Pines.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you see, I didn't actually know what that song. I don't remember what that song was. I just thought, oh, that's a nice sounding song, and I never actually sat there and thought about like what that might have been. But now, okay, now that you mention it, yes. Okay, all right, that
Yeah.
makes sense now.
Well, it's a folk song. I mean, it's
I know it's a
not.
folk song, but I remember the version you're talking about now. All of a sudden,
I like that. That's how it's credited. I mean, it
yeah.
makes sense. But the oh, I lost my pop filter. Just traditional folk song.
Yeah, that's how they get around those those little things called copyrights. It's probably a lot easier to just go back to the original like probably royalty free thing at this point and go from there.
Yeah, I wonder how far you'd have to tread for it actually to go into. Because I imagine for a lot of people, the popular consciousness is the Kurt Cobain version of that
Yeah,
song, even though I bet it's like what happens with Disney stuff, right? Where like they hold like copyright over that version, then it's
yeah,
just like a weird way of how they define that. Like you can infringe upon Cinderella and things like that are public fables, but if you do certain things that infringe upon the Disney version, then they can come after you. I wonder, like, you have to like scream just loud enough in order to infringe upon Kurt Cobain.
yeah. It's one of those things where it just depends on the arrangement and the original. Yeah, yeah. It's the nuance of that stuff is totally lost on me. Unfortunately, I have no idea how any of it works, and it has always confused the hell out of me. I just sort of whenever that happens, I always just look like, okay, is there an old ass version that you can get of this that is not that is basically public domain, and then that's usually what it ends up being. So
For people who don't know what the hell we're talking about,
yeah,
it is not a spoiler to say at the end of the latest Walking Dead episode, there is a cover of the traditional folk song slash Kurt Cobain uh, in the Pines.
yeah.
It's very well done. It's done. It's a female vocalist. I listened to the whole thing instead of skipping the credits.
Yeah, it's a very pretty song, and I after hearing that and just I don't know that the whole series of The Walking Dead, and for that matter, The Wolf Among Us, has had some really great music in it, and that is courtesy of Jared Emerson Johnson, who I think is one of those composers that does not get nearly enough credit for the work that he actually does.
I think sort of like the main theme of The Walking Dead, which they haven't used too much in season 2,
Yeah,
that has like the big violins. It's kind of slow. I wouldn't be able to reproduce it, but I don't know. I like the music in The Walking Dead quite a bit.
yeah,
It's one of those things that I don't think about too often, but the few times that it does stand out,
yeah,
like you realize like, oh man, this is really tremendous. I
yeah.
remember there was the main track that I'm thinking of from Walking Dead, and if Google Hangouts had more multimedia tools, I would just pull it in. But I remember there was a room. There's a room early in Walking Dead season 1. It was either episode 1 or 2. It's when you're in the pharmacy.
Hmm.
You have there's like a blood-soaked cot or a mattress, and the music in that room. I just sat in that room because I just really liked the music.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. None of it's very showy or flashy. None of it like kind of screams, "Listen to this music." It's all just undercurrents of sort of dread and sadness that kind of permeate every little scene, and that's it's perfect for that game because it's just enough to for you to notice it's there, but not distract you from the horrible fucked up things that are happening around you.
Yeah, so I might as well just jump right into it because there's a lot of news. We'll get there. There's a
Yeah,
lot that went on this week, but I did finish The Walking Dead episode 2 last night, which you finished earlier in the week, and you have as soon as I edit it after this conversation, you have sort of a wrap up review sort of thing that we can talk about.
let's call it a recap.
Yeah, recap, sure. That's going up this morning. But so what did you think of episode 2?
Just before I get into that, if you hear any banging sounds or anything in my feed, they are literally yesterday they started building a new building directly next to mine. There is not much I can do about that to avoid the noise, so I'm doing everything I can. So I'm sorry if that gets noisy. As far as the episode goes, and this will be a spoiler-free discussion where the recap will not. So
Yeah, we are not going to talk about story specifics. We will talk in really, really vague terms. We will not pull a Brad. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We will be very careful. I know it's the first week it's been out.
Yeah. But what I will say is that I liked it quite a bit. I think it is a considerably better written and better paced episode than the first one was. The first episode, which I liked in general, but it had this issue for me where it felt like they were going a little too far out of their way to try and hammer home the notion that everything horrible that could have happened to Lee in the first game could very well happen to Clem. Like they are trying to get that point across between like the gaping arm wound and the survivors being like total dicks to her, and just the variety of terrible things that happened in that episode felt just overbearing.
Yeah.
In this case, they spend more time with the characters. They spend more time developing the survivors that Clem has taken up with, and they do a good job of establishing some of those relationships. Some not so much, but others much, much better. And they balance the moments of action considerably better with the moments of character development. Like the story actually goes somewhere. It feels like the plot is headed in a real direction now. I think that the few zombie encounters there are a lot more meaningful and a lot more harrowing than the stuff in the first episode. Because the first episode felt like there was never really much pause for you to like catch your breath and actually see what the hell is going on. So I'm a much bigger fan of this second entry than I was with the first.
Yeah, there were more than a couple spots in the episode where you just get to walk around. You just get to talk to characters. You get to have a lot of mundane but meaningful interactions with the new people you come across, and to be honest, even though you come across new folks in episode 2, everyone still feels extremely fresh.
Yeah.
That is part of your new crew, part of a house you come across in episode 1 when Clementine is on her own adventure, and I like those moments because you just kind of get to soak everything in a way that you don't in the action moments or when you're doing really quick dialogue sequences. And I imagine like those are some of the most production heavy just because they involve so much dialogue and like so many environments for players to walk around in. But
Yeah.
they are absolutely some of my favorite moments because just especially the way it's contextualized in episode 2, and again not getting into why, but
Yeah.
There's something hanging over everything in episode 2 that makes when you're doing the mundane actions, when you're having conversations that you feel like should be the moments where you get to rest, where you get to just kind of get to know who's around you.
Yeah.
Bad things are on the horizon, and it just twists a knot in your gut the entire time, even though the game does nothing to acknowledge it. You just know that stuff's going to happen, and the game doesn't even have to sort of go wink, wink, for it to set just this ominous feeling over everything that happens and sort of get to the climax of the episode.
And the other thing for me was that the first episode, you like every episode has its big 5 choices or whatever. The first one really didn't feel like it had that many choices that mattered. There were choices that you could make, but they didn't necessarily result in really significant things to like as far as like how the story branches. 2 has much more of that. There are, without saying who or why, but there are at least 2 characters in that episode whose lives basically hinge upon decisions that you make in that game. Because if you get through the end of the episode and you make the wrong decisions, they will die. So that is something that I think, whether those characters end up being meaningful in the grand scheme of the story down the road, I don't know. But it felt, good to know that the choices I was making, the things that I was doing, actually had some impact on what was happening in the story versus just sort of like being different versions of the same outcome.
Yeah, and I think that the choices that I always find to be more interesting in The Walking Dead are not necessarily when you're set up with a sequence that's like, this guy on the left is going to die, or this guy on the right is going to die.
It's not that binary, yeah.
Well, it's just you can only do that so many times, and especially, depending on, how early it's happening in a season, maybe you don't have a connection with those characters. Like, it's just, and plus it just, it gets sort of rote in terms of like that being the choice presented. And so they do in episode 2. Not that death isn't always hanging over everything that happens, because it's sort of a defining aspect of of The Walking Dead, but there's some of the choices are a little more twisted and character driven in ways that are not so black and white, and actually had, I think I've mentioned in the past that I played the episodes, mostly just Telltale games, with my wife, and she drives the decisions, but we didn't have enough time for her to make some of these choices where we had to pause the game and then sort of like talk it out. Like, how do we feel about this? Which direction do we want to go? Which I think shows a real nuance to some of the choices that I really appreciated. I think they pay off in terms of making you feel deeply uncomfortable sometimes in a way that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So now that we're 2 episodes in on both The Wolf Among Us and Walking Dead Season 2, what are you feeling a little bit more strongly about now?
The Wolf Among Us has novelty factor, right? It has the fact that it's a new world. I'm never quite sure what's around the corner, whereas The Walking Dead, while surprising, is working within a framework that, especially as a horror fan, like, super familiar with. So I know a lot of the tropes, I know a lot of the ways this can go, so they have to try a little harder, plus it's the second season, and it's just, it's sort of established, whereas The Wolf Among Us has a bit of the sort of excitement of being new. But whereas I think The Wolf Among Us kind of kicked off a little bit faster, and I don't have a good sense of even though I don't have a good sense of actually I think there's still a big reveal of The Wolf Among Us to happen. I think we talked about that when we discussed episode 2. I just have a better sense of where that's going, and that wasn't the case in Walking Dead's episode 1. That felt so much like, oh God, like we need to establish Clementine and make sure people are okay with this, and like you said, the table setting was a little much. And at least by the end of episode 2, it's like, okay, I now know what the arc of season 2 is in The Walking Dead. I like where this is going. I think this is going to be interesting. The previews they have for episode 3 sets up, you can kind of see where we're going for the next couple episodes, at least in terms of general premise. And I think they've set themselves up for some really, really good situations that I'm looking forward to seeing play out.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of split right now because it is kind of opposites for me. Like, the first episode of Wolf Among Us was really strong for me. The second one was a little bit more meh, and then, the reverse as far as Walking Dead goes. I think seeing the way they develop Clem in the second episode, I'm maybe a little bit more intrigued by where things are headed with The Walking Dead. But, knowing that there are 3 episodes and left in both series, and knowing kind of where things are at with the Wolf Among Us, I'm still super curious about that story. I'm still invested in it for sure. But I think where I was very much unconvinced of where the Clem story was going to go in the first episode, I am now far more convinced in the second.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to playing more of both of them. Indications from Telltale have been that the episodes should come out a little bit faster for both. I hope that's true. Because at the current pace, Walking Dead or Wolf Among Us wouldn't finish till well into the fall, and that seems a little crazy, given that Game of Thrones is supposed to be this year. Yeah. It said 2014. I'm still not. Maybe I guess that could happen. I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly we heard, hey, it's coming out in spring of 2015 to coincide with the 5th season of Game of Thrones.
I don't know. That feels like one of those things they could totally do as like, okay, here's the season finale of Game of Thrones. Now we're just going to start this up.
But that's soon. That's like June.
Do we know how long they've been working on it?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I guess it's possible, but maybe that's just my reflexive attitude to Telltale release dates in general.
Well, just wait until they throw a True Detective game on top of all of that as well, because
I don't know if I can handle their art style in.
That's never going to happen. They're never going to get Nick Pizzolatto to write or sign off on anything for the stuff like that. Probably not. But I wonder.
I've played each of these games with my wife. I've found the worlds to be interesting. I don't know about this Borderlands one. I don't know. I guess that's so heavily dependent on the writing and the characters, given that I just don't care for Borderlands. Like, it's just not a series I've gotten into. Seems well liked, seems well made, but just not sort of my thing. And But I've played all the other Telltale ones, and I like the arc that they're on right now, design-wise and narratively. So, I'll certainly give the first episode a shot, and I guess we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, for me, that is a series that when I enjoy it, it's more because of the gameplay than it is because of the world or the characters or the writing or any of that stuff. Like I think some of it's very funny. I think it's extremely sporadic, and I've never really cared about what was happening so much as I've just been willing to kind of chuckle at it when it's funny.
Yeah.
So I guess there are people out there who are super invested in that world, or otherwise they wouldn't be making this game, right? Like there has to be that audience. I mean, those games sell, so I have to imagine there are people who care about that stuff. I don't know any of them, so I'm still sort of at a loss as to where the appeal for that game really lies.
Well, you've got, Jeff, hugely into Borderlands, loves that series.
But he doesn't even think it's that funny.
No, I know, but that's sort of what I'm getting at is that he's someone who spent hundreds of hours playing the Borderlands games, and I remember asking him about the Telltale game, and it was just like, I don't give a shit. Just the audience mixture. I think maybe not a misfire, but I think it's certainly the most experimental of the ones they're doing. As much as like Game of Thrones is like kind of whoa because of the license, I think this one is the one I don't know what to make of quite yet.
Well, Game of Thrones also works because it's a series that's very much invested in characters and narrative twists and just, a lot of like really devious, fucked up shit being done between people versus like action. Whereas Borderlands is kind of an action game, and that's really the reason you play it. So yeah, I don't know. I think Game of Thrones sounds like a good, unique fit for Telltale, whereas this Borderlands thing just seems like a weird decision. But
yeah,
hey, I could be totally wrong. I have no idea.
Sure. So, played that. So looking forward to episode 3. Hopefully we'll hear about when that's coming out real soon. Did you play anything else this week?
No, not really. I've mostly been writing and just kind of trying to get various other things for the site done. So I've not really had much time to play any other games. I started in on South Park again with my girlfriend last night. I got her the 360 version, and she started playing it, and she is enjoying the hell out of that. Have you had a chance to play any of that yet?
I played about 45 minutes, which promptly sent my wife storming out of the room. She could not stand South Park.
Oh, wow, okay.
Like the thought of watching an episode of South Park, she's nothing. It's not like a moral thing. She just cannot stand anything about it.
Wow,
anything.
Okay.
Like I flipped it on, and she was like, "Oh wow, you really want me to go to bed, don't you?" I was like, "Oh damn, I am." And
wow.
She's had I'm going to read my Kindle when I've turned on an episode before, but I turned on the game, and then of course, in the first couple minutes you encounter a button mashing sequence where you are trying to poop properly, and it was just, I'm out.
See, that was the moment that sold my girlfriend, like, okay, this is something I'm definitely going to want to play for the next 13 hours. Like, that was the moment she was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm sold.
Yeah, I played, up through, basically like the 13-minute video they put out, like which is like the intro to the game. So I played like the first 30 minutes or so, and it's so goddamn funny. Like I really, really enjoy it so far. Even though I haven't watched the show in a long, long time, apparently I have seen enough of it to hit like most of the notes that they're going for. Yeah, I like the combat. Like I've only done like the tutorial in the beginning, but I've always liked combat that in RPGs that has sort of that interactive nature, and it's not just setting up and watching some fancy animations. You get at least some sort of interaction, and I like that it's not even just like hit it or not hit it, like that there are variations on how well you did that. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I'm probably not gonna get to it till hopefully this weekend. But the games are stacking up.
They are.
They're stacking up fast and furious. I thought I was gonna get time to play Shadowrun Returns. They put out an expansion for that. That has not happened, and I probably won't get to that until April. But I was sent a code for a certain Yoshi game that might come out next week. somehow wrangled that from Jeff Gerstmann. I don't even know how I managed to pull that off. You know,
Yeah, you'd think he'd
he's
want to keep that
very
all to himself.
he's very protective of that IP. Can't talk about that at all until next Friday's show. Couldn't even tell you anyway because I haven't played it, even if I wanted to break embargo. But I'll be able to talk about that next week. And then I've been getting through more of Danganronpa, but because I like to play one game at a time, or at least no more than two. So I
Yeah,
started
sure.
South Park just because I wanted to see the intro, but I need to see that through. And fortunately, last night had a breakthrough, and while these games tend to have like 9 different twists and turns towards the end, I am at the point where they're like, yeah, we're on to the last class trial. So I'm in the home stretch, I think, on Danganronpa, and really enjoying the story twist. They've had some pretty good ones, but I'll save my thoughts on that till I've managed to finish the mystery on that. But I think that's all I've played.
Make sure you get through that before the end of the weekend, because next week is Titanfall time.
Yeah, I know. Well, I recently had to go through like a harrowing Amazon experience to make sure my Dark Souls copy shows up because we don't.
Yeah, I saw you talking about that.
I don't know what's happening with like Namco is going to send us multiple copies, but I'm not sure what the situation is with how that's going to show up. It's like we have not gotten copies of Dark Souls 2 yet, retail copies anyway, stuff to play on our normal consoles, and so I figured I was probably going to get a copy from Namco, but I was like, I'm not willing to gamble that whatsoever. So I ordered a copy on Amazon, and so did Vinny, and both of us got notifications that our Amazon normally guarantees day one release day delivery. That you'll, even if you have, I think you have to order at least 2-day shipping or something like that. But anyway, I have Amazon Prime, so I thought I was going to get it March 11th, and I get an email. It's like, hey, March 13th, and I was like, hey, that's not. That's not why I ordered from you, Amazon.
Right. That's not what they're supposed to be doing.
No, so I didn't order like the fancy collector's edition. I have like the Black Armor edition, which is just like DLC and some stuff that comes packed in with that version. I think it's a fancier case, but it costs the same.
Right.
So I just talked to his customer service rep. I was like, hey, that's weird. Why is it 2 days later? And they were like, sir, we don't know, but we're going to make sure it gets to you on March 11th. And then, poof. March 11th. I had no idea. And so I had told Vinny to do the same thing. He talked to old Samantha on the customer service side, and the same exact thing happened to him. It was just poof. Now your game's coming on March 11th. So.
Did he press the the panic button on the Kindle, and the helpful little customer service lady came up on the thing? It's like, how can I help you? And
yeah,
talk to the lady.
I guess I don't know. I'm hearing from other folks and some people are mentioning in the chat that they did not have success the way that I did. So I sort of feel like mine was really supposed to come on March 13th. Namco screwed up maybe pre-order allocations, and that I just kind of got shuffled up because I complained.
And you complained first.
Yeah, I did it as soon as I got the email. And it sounds like not everyone is having success like that. Some people mentioned to me like, hey, just get it digital. Totally could.
Yeah.
But I'm not someone that likes collecting games, but I do like having physical copies of my favorite games, and I expect that Dark Souls 2 is probably going to be one of those. Like the shelf that I do have, I have one primary shelf above my TV that holds maybe 30 things, and then I have one other shelf, secondary shelf, that holds probably 150 things, and all of that stuff is just immediately reflective of like my tastes and my favorite things, as opposed to what do I want to watch tonight?
Right.
I have a huge library, so I like to have that stuff because it's mostly when people come into my apartment, they look at that stuff and they're like, oh, you can immediately glean exactly what I'm into based on the stuff that I've put on display, and I want Dark Souls to be one of those. So.
Yeah, I had to give that up at a certain point. Not so much with games. I mean, though I am buying much more, far more digital copies of games than I am physical than I used to. But with my DVD and Blu-ray collection, I eventually realized I just don't have the shelf space for that stuff anymore. So rather than getting rid of all my DVDs or whatever, I just got a bunch of DVD books put everything into the books, got rid of all the cases, and then like put everything into an app. So now if like people are over at my house and they want to look to see what movies I am, I just hand them my phone. And it's like, here is a list of every movie I own. Just look through that. It is not as much fun. That is not as much fun.
I mean that makes total sense. Like I have a very, very tiny collection. I mostly have like horror movies and then like a sprinkling of other things. Like I bought, Criterion just had a sale. They had 50% off everything in their library, so I picked up Godzilla. Like that's a movie that I want the Criterion version, and I want that in the highest quality. That's better than I'm going to get buying it off iTunes or watching it on Netflix, or as good as some of that stuff has gotten, it's never going to be as good as the Blu-ray. But my collection is extremely, extremely small. Like it's all very specific and deliberate. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm 99% digital, and most of my games are that way as well. But I had credit at Amazon, and I'm betting that Dark Souls 2 is going to be one of my favorite games. I guess it could be terrible. Suppose it could be terrible.
There is a possibility.
But I'm hoping that's not the case. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'm getting my copy on March 11th, so I'm excited.
People in the chat are calling me a monster for getting rid of all my DVD cases. Look, if it was like a nice collector's case or something, yes, I still have those. I didn't like throw away the nice stuff, but like I don't need a million fucking plastic DVD cases littering my apartment.
And you know it's key to what you just said.
What?
Apartment.
Yeah.
You don't have a home.
Yeah, I don't have like a giant house to put stuff in, and I share a space with my girlfriend who has a lot of her own stuff, so I'm not just gonna like say, hey, get rid of all those books you own because I want to put a bunch of cheap, shitty DVD cases up on this shelf. Like that's not a nice thing to do.
Yeah. I like the insinuation in the chat that people think, man, they bought a Criterion collection of the 1999 Godzilla. I think it would be hilarious if they put together like a really nice package for the 1999 Godzilla. I would buy it. I would 100% buy it.
Well, I mean, they did all those Michael Bay movies. Like there's Criterion version. There's a Criterion version of Armageddon. I know. I own it. And that.
Well, yeah. I mean, for certain, cheesy action movies, like I love Armageddon. I think that's a great movie.
They're serious about it. Like there is a whole essay written in the insert of that thing about how it is like this great pain to the American working class and just all this other shit about fucking Armageddon. They are really serious about that stuff.
They could do one for Independence Day. They should do one for Independence Day. Did you see the Oscars? They mentioned Independence Day. They put a little Bill Pullman in there. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and their little tribute to movies people have actually seen. It was pretty great.
I thought that part was great.
I realized I saw the same Criterion sale you did, and I went looking through it, and I realized I have gone through so many Criterion sales at this point that I now own all the Criterion movies I would want to own. Mm-hmm. So now those things mean nothing to me, and I am sad.
That's fair. So those are the games. I can't really say anything more about South Park. Talk about Walking Dead. Not gonna talk about my Class Trials. Haven't played any more Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong. I need.
You'll get back to it.
Too many games. Many video games.
Where are all these games in goddamn January?
Right. Well, at least I managed to get addicted to Splunky and Dark Souls, so I couldn't be excited for Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2 if I hadn't played Dark Souls 1. But I'll move on to the news because shit went down this week.
Yeah, a lot of shit went down this week. Holy shit.
Right at the beginning of the week, Amy Hennig, no longer at Naughty Dog.
Yeah, the writer of the Uncharted series is now out. Despite, I don't know, it's weird because the original story that came from IGN had a source that claimed that she had been forced out by Neil Druckmann, and I forget who the other name was, but it was someone that was involved with The Last of Us.
Creative leads of Last of Us.
Yeah, and yesterday Naughty Dog straight up commented and said, we normally don't comment on these sorts of things, but because two members of our staff are kind of being dragged through the mud in all this, we want to straight up deny, say outright they had nothing to do with any of this. That is a false statement, and that is all we will say about it. I have no idea what personally, whether that is true or not. I mean, that seems like exactly the kind of thing you would say if that were true or not true. But regardless, it is sort of a surprise and crazy thing considering she had been working on Uncharted 4, and then all of a sudden she is now just gone.
Someone's mentioning Bruce Straley is the
is
the other person on The Last of Us. It's The report was interesting that that IGN's report put in that little spot about being
Yeah,
pushed out. That's a very specific phrasing
yeah.
that I don't know their sourcing. I don't know who they were talking to. The report mentioned multiple sources.
Yeah.
But pushed out, whether that's IGN's phrasing or the phrasing of their sources, paints a very specific narrative of
Yeah.
what happened to Amy, or at least what happened to Amy surrounding her exit. It paints a certain narrative surrounding the atmosphere at Naughty Dog, potentially why The Last of Us was made at all if she was
Mhm.
working on Uncharted while they were building The Last of Us. And, you know, whether she orchestrated that or not to get, sympathy on her side on her way out, hard to say. I don't know. But it certainly puts Naughty Dog on the defensive, and I'm not surprised that they put out a statement that is ultimately sort of meaningless because it doesn't, it's as meaningless as the original report is meaningless on saying pushed out because we don't actually know what's going on there. And the original report was anonymous, and this one is on the record, but is just PR, sort of, oh, everything's fine, which,
Yeah.
it's always somewhere in the middle.
So yeah, and it's regardless of what the circumstances were, that's unfortunate because Hennig has been the creative lead on that series pretty much from its inception. She's probably one of the more well liked and well revered writers in this industry, and when something that sudden happens, it's usually not because she just decided to move on to something else, or she just it's usually under circumstances that are less than great. I imagine she will start telling her story when she can, if she chooses to. But I also imagine that she will find work very quickly, pretty much wherever she wants it.
Yeah, I think it is, without getting into the politics of Naughty Dog, and I've done a little bit of digging into what happened over there, but unfortunately everything I've heard is second and third hand, so I don't feel comfortable sharing it. And once you have an exit that is potentially messy, you start hearing things that just are meant to reinforce that narrative one way or the other. So, I don't have anything to add, unfortunately, but there aren't many prominent women in charge of AAA franchises that are also the people that are out there interviewing and being the figurehead for those franchises. So purely in terms of what was a really good thing for the industry, I think, just generally speaking, and she was damn good at her job too. It wasn't just like an optics thing. Like, she was well regarded as being a perfectionist and a very talented writer. I like the Uncharted series, but you know what I liked a lot more? Soul Reaver, and she was instrumental in writing those games, and I love the world of Soul Reaver. I love the world of Michael Jordan's basketball game for the SNES.
Yeah, totally.
Chaos in the Windy City. A lot of great world building that happened in there.
Where's that sequel? Where's that like Indiegogo fund? Where's that? Give me that sequel. Come on, man.
I know exactly. I wanted to know what happened at the end of Chaos in the Windy City. Where did the chaos go in that Windy City? And I think that's a loss. If Microsoft's smart, they're getting on the phone with her. If Sony's smart, they're getting on the phone with her. She seems someone that knows how to.
Well, to be fair, technically she was just at Sony.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, to give her
Larger
her own studio and keep her within the Sony family, so to speak. She knows how to do AAA in a way it's really interesting. She does really great characters on a grand scale, and it would be tragic to lose her. I hope she makes games regardless. If she wants to go be independent and do tiny stuff, that's fine. But man, I would hope that she stays at the scale that she's at, because she at least keeps. I don't know what to expect from her when it comes to AAA, and I would like for her to stay there if that's possible. So, Microsoft's smart. They would just be like, hey, how much you need? Here's a check.
Come work on the next Halo.
No.
I know. I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying that seems like the first thing they would bring up if they were going to do that. She's not the only one who's leaving. Jack Tretton is also exiting out of Sony. He has been sort of the SCEA president and sort of the number one dude at E3 press conferences over the last several years, and by all regards, an extremely well liked and charming, pretty pretty damn good at his job kind of dude. He again, kind of out of nowhere, sort of surprising that this would come up now. But some people have suggested maybe this is just, now that the PlayStation brand is sort of back on top, he's using that, that cachet he's earned to try and find something, a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit bigger or better. But at the same time, that sucks because that was a very likable dude in an executive role, and there aren't very many of those.
Well, and maybe he wants to go somewhere that's a little less volatile.
That's
Video
also
games
possible.
is a business where you're up and then you're down. It happens every single time to every single company. You can only extend your dominance for as long as you can avoid being at the bottom.
Sure.
It happens to everyone, and he's got Sony in a really good place. If suddenly the console market takes a turn somehow in 2014, then he got out while the getting was good. And it just says he chose not to renew the contract. Maybe it was a money thing. Maybe it was something more. But he's been there a long time. He was there during the good times. He was there during the bad times, and he brought them back to a good place. It seems like the right kind of time for someone like him to move on. I don't know anything about the person who's replacing him, who seems like a permanent replacement.
Yeah.
Sort of a interim president and CEO of SEA. But we'll see if that's the guy. He's got a lot to live up to in terms of the press conference prestige, because Jack got real good at doing those.
Yeah. Maybe he'll just throw Adam Boyce out there more and be like, "Look, you just do this. I don't want to do this. Just you go be the voice of PlayStation." I mean, it's not like he couldn't do it.
Jack just got really good, and this is all separate from, how he handles himself internally in terms of guiding Sony and the PlayStation brand and their hardware. But he started off as just sort of that same old executive, the one that you just sort of roll your eyes at, where the only reason they're on stage is not because they're charismatic and interesting and the best choice. They're there because, well, they're important enough, and that's, they said they want to be on stage, so let them be on stage. It's why people kind of roll their eyes at, like, Don Matrick when he sort of whips his hair around and stuff like that. It's just, you're not good at this. Like, I understand you want to be up there, and you've worked real hard to get to this spot, but you're not good at this. So, like, just stop. Just stop. And Jack managed to find a weird spot in between where he had a blue-collar sort of endearing attitude, despite the fact that he was a highly paid, probably millionaire executive.
Yeah.
And he was real humble about the fact that he kind of sucked at it. And I think that's what endeared people to him in a really fun way.
Jeff described him as sort of like a hardscrabble PI type. Like he had that real kind of sort of gruff but friendly personality. So hey, maybe True Detective season 2, Jack Tretton. Think about it.
Yeah, and people in the chat are joking about it, but Adam Boyce is probably a good choice if they wanted to have someone kind of carry that. Adam is a funny guy on good terms with developers. He would be a strong choice, if not one that deeply weirded me out to see him on stage for that long.
From fucking Age of Booty to the stage, leading the stage at Sony at E3, that would be a hell of a story. It already is a hell of a story, but that would add an extra little cherry on top.
Yeah, so I think the Amy move is the more strange
it's
one.
It's the bigger bummer in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, like executives shuffle out all the time.
Totally.
The fact that Jack was there for as long as he was is probably more shocking than the fact that he's moving on. The Amy one, she was in mid-development on a new game.
Yeah.
That probably is in a pretty good position. It's not like it just started development yesterday.
Right.
Hard to know where it was at production-wise, but that one's a little more, I think, tragic for people who are fans of the studio, and it's going to be fun to watch where she ends up. I'm curious how fast she chooses to establish herself, or if she takes a break from the challenges and stress of making those large-scale games. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely curious to see where she ends up.
Same.
Let's see.
Did you see the follow-up stuff on Irrational that went up on Polygon yesterday?
Yeah, I'm going to feature that in Worth Reading this week, but highly recommend folks check out Chris Plant's story that talks to, seems about 6 different sources that were there when Irrational sort of closed down, but then also sort of talked through BioShock Infinite's development arc over the last 2 to 3 years. And super fascinating piece, extremely well done by Chris, and I would highly recommend folks check it out.
Definitely.
I mentioned this in Worth Reading, but probably the most interesting bit in the whole thing is that BioShock being a surprise hit, more so than they expected, gave Irrational a certain creative and financial leeway. Basically, they were told, go do whatever you need to do for the next couple of years, which sounds amazing on paper, but ended up being their curse. And the story makes it sound like the moment that people were brought in to focus the project, which is both Rod Ferguson and someone else's name who escapes me, but 2 different people were brought in, both on the creative side and sort of on the production side, to focus that game. And the team alleges that Ken did his best work, and the team did their best work when they had people setting deadlines and getting them on track.
Yep.
It sounds kind of tragic that the thing they were rewarded with kind of sounded like the curse that really hurt them.
I mean, some people just, don't thrive under no guidelines. So you give someone just total carte blanche to make whatever they want, and they spend an endless amount of time tinkering and futzing and just never quite getting on a track toward completing something. I mean, that's true of a lot of different creative types, and it's why, in most situations when you are given a project or given, time and money, you are also given deadlines and, different benchmarks and goals to hit. Because, as great as the idea of just total creative freedom sounds, not everyone thrives under that. And I think it's, that story definitely illustrated that, Ken Levine, creative, guru that he is, probably needs someone telling him this has to be done by this time for him to really kind of buckle down and just nail the things that need to get nailed down for those games to work.
Yeah. And so I recommend people check out the piece. It elaborates a lot more on that stuff, gives particularly great insight into, I think, exactly what you say. I think these sort of end of the piece, the employees sort of surmise that Ken was a bad manager, continues to be a bad manager, and that
a self-acknowledged bad manager.
Right, and when he's paired with someone that can harness what he's not great at with what he is great at, he has the potential for great things, and hopefully they can maybe figure that out on a smaller scale. But it makes it seem pretty tragic that there was a way for Irrational to turn out differently. It didn't happen. Let's see. What was the one I was going to pull up? Watch Dogs has a release date.
Yes, it does.
May 27th. Sounds like it's not coming out on Wii U. The line that was given to folks was that it will come a few months later. So I guess it could still come out, but that sounds like a great way to have no one buy Watch Dogs on Wii U.
Yeah.
But, that game is coming out just before E3.
So that gets to be the Last of Us of this year. Big game right before E3 that everyone is like scrambling to review before they all take off for the show.
Well, Last of Us actually came out the week of E3.
That's right. And reviews went like the week before.
Yeah, I played it ahead of that, but that game actually came out the week of E3, which I thought was actually kind of interesting and smart. I thought that was not a bad time to release a game like that. But so alongside the release date, they put out a big story trailer that I think for the first time really gives us a sense of the plot of Watch Dogs. And I don't know about you, I kind of wish I didn't watch that trailer. The story is way less interesting than I was hoping for, I guess.
It's what I've been worried about all along with that damn game, was that it was like this cool mechanical concept of, cell phone Batman running around, using the city to his own nefarious means, and that the story would be hot garbage. I mean, it could be fine, it could be okay, but like the plot line they have showed in that trailer, and the dialogue they chose to highlight in that trailer did not give me any great hope for caring about what is actually going on in that game.
It's like, oh, his wife was killed, and now here's a magic cell phone. And like this voice, the voice acting, like
it's
the
not
gravelly
good.
Batman. Like, am I really gonna listen to that for like 40 hours? Like, mostly like I turned off the trailer halfway through. It was just like, oh no, this is deflating my interest in Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Like, lead Haxor in the chat says, what were people expecting? Shakespeare? It's like, no, but I was expecting something a little bit better than this. And maybe it's just a trailer. Maybe it plays out a little bit better in the game. I don't have a whole lot of expectations that's going to be the case, but it could still be a lot of fun. Having a magic cell phone that lets you do all this stuff could be really interesting, gameplay wise. But maybe I do wish it was just an Assassin's Creed game.
It didn't. If nothing else, it now explains to me why they spent so long not talking about any of the actual things that were happening in the game and just talking about mechanics. Because I'm guessing they probably know it's not that good.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm definitely gonna play that game. It's not like I was expecting a nuanced critique of the security state from Watch Dogs. Like, I think that was putting a little too much on a game like that, even if its marketing likes to pretend that, like, Snowden, like, witty commentary. But, I knew it was never going to be something like that. I mean, they do allude to having some pretty heavy subjects in there. There's a shot of what looks like human trafficking and things of that nature. And, the way that the story is sort of heavy-handed and B-movie-ish, it doesn't give me a whole lot of sense that they're going to treat that stuff with a whole lot of gravity, and that it would be very easy to imagine they're just going to invoke a lot of heavy and dark imagery just to say that they're invoking heavy and dark imagery. But I just hope the game's fun at this point. I'm sort of writing off the story and hoping that the manipulating the world is going to be an enjoyable experience, which it very much could be.
In a worst case scenario, I'm hoping it's just, like one of the less interesting Assassin's Creed games where, like, the mechanics and the combat and the things that you do in it are fun enough to sort of make up for the fact that you don't really care about what's going on. Maybe not Assassin's Creed 3, but, like, let's say, like, one of the lesser two spin-offs.
Yeah. So we'll see. At least that game's got a release date, so Alex, you and I can look forward to posting all sorts of trailers.
Yeah, no, how many do you think we're going to get between now and May 27th?
I think every time we get one that we should post, we should just change the publish date on an old trailer, because I don't think people will know the difference.
Okay.
I wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say one a week from now until then.
So many. We can't post all those. We can't do that. I refuse.
But what if we did?
I refuse. Let's see. Dark Souls 2 PC has a release date, April 25th, which is too long for me to wait.
Yep.
I don't want to wait until April 25th. But I will say, for folks that are going to wait or only play on the PC, that is a much better date than Namco had been hinting at. It had sounded more like it was going to come end of May, if not later than that. So April 25th is, according to this story, 6 weeks after Dark Souls 2 comes out on PS3 and 360. So that's a pretty reasonable, it's not day and date, but, they're promising 60 frames a second. They're promising a much better port. So if there is DLC for Dark Souls 2, which they haven't said for sure, but they've gotten closer and closer to saying yes to, my guess is I'll do my second playthrough of that game for the DLC on the PC. But I can't wait. I'm going to play that on PS3. I want to play that game with the community when it comes out. But April 25th, not too bad.
Have the previous Souls games also not been as good on PC? Like, haven't there been, like, history of, like, kind of bad ports for those?
Yeah, there was no PC version of Demon Souls, but there was a much later port of Dark Souls to the PC that was terrible.
Right.
I played it. There is a community fix that allows you to run it at a proper resolution and change the frame rate, but because of the game's code, if you alter the frame rate to 60 frames a second, it actually changes some of the geometry and physics of the game, and you can fall through parts of the world because the game is not designed to literally be in 60 frames a second. You can kind of get around that, and you can still play the game like that, but it's a garbage port that is salvaged only by elements of the community that have done what From Software didn't do. But by all accounts, it sounds like this PC version should be a lot better And it's too bad it's not day and date because I would sure as hell like to play it in 1080p at 60 frames a second, but
Sure.
I'm not going to wait that 6 weeks. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it, Alex. I won't.
That's the problem with internet culture. You can't wait for anything anymore. It just has to be right now. You got to be a part of the conversation right immediately.
I want to hashtag join the conversation.
I bet you do.
I want to do it.
I bet you fucking do.
I'm just gonna Shaq-Fu, Alex.
Yeah. So let's talk about this for a second.
Go ahead.
So Shaq-Fu is a horrible game from the 90s. God awful in just about every way. There are some people who might ironically claim to have some kind of weird nostalgia for that game, and that's fine. You can do that if that is your choice, but you still have to acknowledge that it is a busted-ass, terrible fighting game that no one should have ever cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is an Indiegogo campaign, at least partially supported by Shaquille O'Neal himself, because fuck, what else is he doing, to make Shaq-Fu 2. This is, I guess, a newish studio that wants to make this. The campaign is very much about talking about how, the previous game, was ruined by corporate suits who didn't understand what real gamers want. And obviously they know how to make the Shaq-Fu game that everyone has been clamoring for, these many years since. This is horrible for a variety of reasons. One, a number of the campaign goals are kind of gross, including ones that let you pay to make concept art for the game, which is maybe one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And two, Shaquille O'Neal doesn't even want to fund a Shaq-Fu sequel by himself. That man has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and even he doesn't think it's worth throwing in $400,000 to make sure this game happens. And there are people that are willing to throw their own money into this? What the fuck?
Let's see what it's at right now.
Probably not very much.
I don't think it's gonna make it.
Well, no, that's the problem with Indiegogo, is that it doesn't matter. With Indiegogo, you still get the money that you earn. You just don't get the full amount necessarily.
It's at 50 of 450,000. I wish it was
at $50,000 already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see with some of the more egregious perks. Let's see if any of those have been claimed. So the most you can pay, $35,000 for an evening at the TNT studio. For a meet and greet with Shaq.
Yeah.
But don't worry, travel not included.
Yeah, throw some money in on this. This sounds great. This sounds like a great use of your time, your hard-earned cash. Totally. I hope someone buys that, and I hope they're fucking miserable.
$25,000. Dinner with Shaq. If you have 6 friends with $3,600 each, then you can group together to get this awesome perk.
Yeah.
$15,000. Ballin' at Shaq's Shack. 5 fans get to bring a guest to Shaq's house for lunch and a game of pickup basketball in Shaq's gym to be broadcast online. Travel not included. Yeah, the one you're talking about is the $6,500 work as a concept artist, which is insulting and disgusting.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. This whole
thing
is so
very
stupid.
Misguided.
This is playing on the same dumbass nostalgia people have for things like Space Jam and whatever else. This is people just trying.
Hey! I legitimately like Space Jam. Back off.
What is wrong with you? It's a terrible movie. Space Jam is a terrible movie.
It is hilarious. There is a commentary with Bugs and Daffy, and the director, Bill Murray, is in it. What do you got against Bill Murray?
Yeah, Bill Murray. Yeah, he's talked a lot of really good things about that movie in the years since. He clearly holds that up as one of his fucking masterpieces.
You're an asshole.
I'm right.
I almost said Shaq-Fu is a great movie.
I would rather watch a Shaq-Fu movie than I would play another Shaq-Fu game at this point.
I own Space Jam on Blu-ray, and I don't feel any regret over that. None whatsoever. None.
Yeah. But but as for Shaq-Fu 2, Jesus Christ, not a good idea.
Yeah, If he wants to make Shaq-Fu 2, then make Shaq-Fu 2. Like, crowdfunding it is... Multimillionaires crowdfunding stuff is... it's hard to stomach. There's a reason that, someone like Spike Lee got shit over him going to Kickstarter. There are scenarios, obviously, that make sense. I think, Veronica Mars and other ones. Like, there are times where I understand why folks in privileged positions use crowdfunding. And, the one silver lining, like, away from all of Shaq-Fu and all that stuff, I'll say, is that Kickstarter has shown statistically that there are studies where when you get these multimillionaires that come in, and Shaq is well beyond a multimillionaire, that come in and do crowdfunding, the gut reaction, and I think it's the right one, is like, it's gross that they're coming in and asking for money that they could spend themselves. They're so confident about this project, go get it made by yourself. Yeah. The attention that celebrities of that stature bring to these services filters out to other projects in really meaningful ways. They found that, like, when Zach Braff, Spike Lee, and Indiegogo will probably find this with Shaq, these get stories written in places that don't write about these services normally, right? Because these celebrities bring a certain stature, and this story is sort of funny enough that it'll get written up in a lot of different places, and then people get to find out what crowdfunding is. They find other projects and they put their money in, and like that's been proven by Kickstarter that happens. So while maybe ethically and morally it seems a little bankrupt that someone like Shaq is coming to a service like this, it ultimately does usually help out projects that do need help. So I guess that's the only positive I think I can spin out of this is that hopefully it means people that don't know what crowdfunding is do, and then put their money towards something that's actually worthwhile.
Yes, hopefully they put their money toward literally anything but a Shaq-Fu sequel. That would be good. That would be beneficial.
Yep. God damn it.
So stupid.
Shaq-Fu returns, and this time we won't foo it up. Where's my gun?
It was everything I could do not to throw my mouse at my wall as soon as I saw that line. Like, just, oh, god damn you people.
Yeah. People want to drop questions in the chat. We start winding this down.
Yeah.
It's just, I just want to turn this off. Shaq-Fu is just making me feel gross.
Go take a second shower after this.
You should do an Encyclopedia Bombastica Shaq-Fu.
No, because I haven't played Shaq-Fu since like 1995, and I really don't want to have to relearn anything about Shaq-Fu ever.
What if I went on eBay right now and saw how much Shaq-Fu was and thought about sending it to you?
I would film myself burning the cartridge.
What if I
put that on the website?
What if I made you do Shaq-Fu for Game Boy Advance? No, Game Boy, regular Game Boy.
I would take a hammer to it. I would film myself taking a hammer to it.
How do you think CBS would feel if I just clicked buy it now on Shaq-Fu for Game Boy Advance, which is, or God,